Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. I promised a parable, and yet again the parable will feature the character named Woe. And if you've not heard of this before, woe is every human. Woe really is not a gender. Woe is a woe man. And in that we will call him a he because it makes sense in your language to do so. But this is for all of you. In some ways, it's a story that some of you will recognize. In some ways, it isn't because it's metaphoric. Now, dear ones, parables always have a message. Parables will always be metaphors of other things. Sometimes we'll explain them, sometimes we won't. But we want to as we go on this one. I'm going to give it a name. Woe and his backyard. Right away, you feel that perhaps the backyard isn't the backyard, and you'd be right. And in a moment, we'll tell you more. Woe had a backyard, and all through his life, it was so important to him. And like so many of you who had a backyard, you can remember, perhaps, if you lived there long enough, the things that took place in it that are part of your youth. You actually will remember it, perhaps, as you were small, and the things that were added to it, the things that stayed the same, the things, perhaps, that you counted on. The backyard, in this particular case, is your reality. It's you. It's how you think. It's how you do things. And, of course, all of those are shaped when you're very young. And in Woe's case, he remembers so clearly the day that his father brought the tree. The tree was already pretty big. Dad brought a piece of equipment that now he knows is called a backhoe, dug a hole and put in the tree. And the whole reason for that was for Woe. The tree was put in when Woe was small. In fact, he was almost 5, but he remembers it. And his dad said, "This is going to be your tree house. And when you're a little older, Woe, we'll build it together, and you'll love it." And that's what happened. A number of years passed, and Woe watched that tree grow. And the branches could eventually then support himself, his father, other things, and they began their treehouse. The treehouse, dear ones, represents the childhood. In Woe's case, it was a good one, and he remembers it very, very vividly. But he remembers something else that he laughs about even to this day. When his father built the treehouse, very slowly, very methodically, very well, his father found 2 oil barrels, almost like trash cans that were open at the top, and he turned them upside down and put them next to the tree in order to support a part of the treehouse. Now, what's significant in the barrels was that through the years that followed, even into Woe's adulthood, the barrel stayed in the same place. And this was because they were ultimately functional. Even after the tree house was gone, they became a picnic table. You just put a piece of wood on them, and that's where you had your parties. Right next to the tree, that's where you wanted to sit for the shade. If you had a project in the backyard, if you wanted to build anything, the barrel supported the table for that. It was a project table. The barrels never moved. Interesting, some of the neighbors noticed that. They say, "Ever going to move those barrels, Woe?" And he said, "I don't think so." And the joke then becomes this. He said, "Someday we'll either have one of 2 things. Either the rapture will come or Woe will move the barrels." And it was a neighborhood joke. The barrels don't move. Dear ones, in your backyard, you got barrels. You never move them. You can't move them. You would never think of moving them because of the core truth. Question, did you put them there or did your dad? And that is a metaphor, because perhaps some of you don't have a dad, but you get it. I know you get it. What important person in your life put those things there that became ultimately stationary, that you won't move from, and you'll never move from, but you use it all the time because it works, and it works. That tree, it continued to grow. At the same time that it continued to grow, I'll tell you about the playhouse. Now, here is where we get gender specific. Woe got a tree house because that's what boys want, but he also got a playhouse. His father and his friends built him the playhouse. Now, if we looked at genders, if Woe is a woe man growing up, then he's a small girl, and he wanted the playhouse. So we are honoring the idea of the gender here as well. The playhouse also representing the inner child, the places where the parties were given, where you played house, where you made meals that were pretend, where it was a fort, it was many things. It's where mom and dad would go to work and you would play in the playhouse. In the backyard. The backyard then becomes your childhood, your life, your belief system. And the tree, wow, it keeps growing, and that's what you hang on to, because there are certain things in life that you have to know are solid. And if they're not solid, dear ones, it's tough. You got to have something to hang on that you can count on. And Woe's tree was that. Long after the tree house went away, he was hanging on to that tree, and it grew and grew. And pretty soon, that tree was enormous. In fact, it was almost as big as the backyard itself. It was a canopy, like in a forest. It shaded the entire backyard. Woe would go into the backyard when he was an adult and grab his drink and his straw, and he'd sit there in his chair and he'd say, "This is good." And everything around him, and he'd reminisce and say, well, this is a good place. I love this tree. Thank you, Barrels, for being there. And the playhouses, I can remember good things about my life. And then he reflected, well, yes, of course, there's the negative things. And he started listing some of those. And he said, I'll get through them because I'm a balanced person. But about the rats. He says, we have rats and of course, they're not from my yard. They come from the neighbor's yard. Now, I'm not going to tell the neighbor he has rats that are getting into my yard because I love my neighbor. There are certain things you don't tell your neighbor and your friends. You don't tell them about your rats. You don't tell them how to raise their children. You just love them. So I'll deal with the rats as I can. It's a negative thing. They come, they go. I don't know how. They come over the fence. Now, the rats are, of course, the challenges in life. They're the things that you look at and you don't want to deal with, but you have to deal with, and you deal with them. Sometimes in some backyards, there are just too many rats. And that's when you go into dysfunction and stress, and that's when you go into poor health. But Woe, he had a good idea of life, and he dealt with the rats. Woe was balanced. He was a good woe man. And then there was the snakes. Now, he didn't know how the snakes were getting in, but he understood that snakes could go under fences, and there weren't many, but when there were, he was afraid of the snakes. He didn't want any part of it. He'd go in the house and hide and call somebody else to get the snake. The snake was always the fear of something you couldn't fix. It was the fear of death, disease. It was whatever it is that's beyond a rat. And Woe said, I deal with these things. I know how to deal with these things. We get rid of the snakes, and I return to a place where I can sit in the chair with my drink and sip it and say, I'm okay. I'm okay. And there it was. Until a certain date. And then came the earthquake. Woe can remember sitting there sipping his drink. knowing that everything was just fine until the earthquake, and it rumbled and it swayed, and he felt that tree crack. A branch or two had come down. The playhouse was listing. All of these things, and he was so happy. He was not hurt. His neighbors were not hurt. He looked around. He didn't know anybody who had perished, but oh boy, was there some changes. And after he'd recovered from the event, he looked around and said, I don't know what happened, but it's still okay. Tree's a little different. The playhouse is a little different. I think it's all right. Yeah, until the inspectors came. Now, the inspectors can be almost anything in your life, but they do represent authority. Sometimes they don't represent authority, they represent epiphany. Interesting, isn't it? Anything that would ask you to change your backyard. But in this particular case, he knew he had to because the earthquake had happened. Interesting. If you looked into this parable, there were those in his neighborhood, are you ready? Who had no earthquake. But he did, and so did his neighbor. That tells you a little bit about the unspoken things in a parable. Woe was an old soul. Woe was a good woman. Woe had a consciousness that was ready to evolve. And his earthquake changed his backyard. The authorities came and they said, the tree, let's talk about the tree. And Woe said, no, if you're going to tell me the tree has to go, you leave. And they said, no, Woe, it doesn't have to go. It's too heavy. You saw it here. And they started to explain Gaia to Woe. They said, in the forests, Gaia takes care of the trees. Naturally prunes out through fire, disease, whatever. There is a system that takes care of things. But you have a tree that you elected to plant outside the forest. That means you are responsible for what Gaia would normally do. The tree needs to be pruned. You should have pruned it all along. Now, if you follow it so far, pruning that tree is that thing that you hold on to for strength. Pruning the tree actually might mean, depending upon who's here and who's listening, that you have to reevaluate your reality on a regular basis. And Woe hadn't. Most people hadn't. Most humans haven't. The tree is the tree. And suddenly they were saying, you got to prune it. Woe said, I don't want to watch. Will you assure me the tree will still be alive? And they said, not only alive, it's going to live for decades, maybe even past you. Whoa, the tree is the tree. It's a beautiful tree. We wouldn't hurt it. We're just going to prune it so it can grow better. When it was finished, Woe came back. Didn't know what he was going to see. Walked in the backyard and fell to his knees, sobbing. Then pruned it. They killed it. They hadn't killed it, of course, but Woe had never seen a tree pruned like that before. There was no more canopy. There were no more branches. Funnily enough, through his lifetime, he had noticed a lot more stinging bugs. Now there were none. He didn't realize his tree was dropping them on him, even while he had his drink. He was gone. And what's this? He's going to have to get sunglasses. There's too much light. There's no more shade. And the inspector says, don't worry, there will be very soon. It doesn't take long. They grow back quickly, believe me. Woe didn't like what he saw at all. He understood what they were saying, but his tree, was gone. The tree that he knew was gone. The shade, all the branches, it had been cut back to nothing. And then the inspector said, I hope you didn't mind, Woe, but in the process of pruning the tree, we had to move the barrels. And Woe said, you moved the barrels? And he says, yes, it's okay, Woe. You moved the barrels? Yes, Woe, it's all right. It's all right. Woe looked around and wondered whether the rapture was coming. They moved the barrels. When we moved the barrels, we noticed something, Woe. Did you know that you had a nest of snakes in there? What? Yes, they were in the barrels all the time. Did you ever look under those things? How many years have they been there? Well, then he realized, for life, he never had looked under there. That's where the snakes were coming from. Look at the metaphor, dear ones. The things that you would never touch, the things that were absolute true to you, the things that your father put there. If you had moved them, it would be almost a travesty. It would be to his memory. You just don't move those things that are so important to you. That perhaps your pastor and your priest told you, or your mom or your dad, or that professor that you love so much, and those barrels don't move because that's a tribute to their memory. And under the barrel were the snakes. Because they were never moved. I think you get it. Well, you know I'm sorry to tell you this, but that playhouse, you got to get rid of it. We could fix it, but it's going to cost too much. It'd be better if we just got rid of it. It's not, it's not an authorized structure anyway. It doesn't really have a foundation, and it's listing. It's going to fall on you. Woe was numbed at this time. He says, go ahead, take the playhouse. They took it. Came back the next day, it was gone. Met the inspector. The inspector said, it's a little harder than we thought to take that playhouse. And he says, why? And he says, well, because you had a rat's nest in there. You mean they weren't coming from the other yard? Oh, no. They were coming from your playhouse. Well, how often did you go in that playhouse? And Will said, well, not since I was a child. It was just in there. It's just a memory. I want you to look at this, dear ones. There are those of you who still have the memory of the playhouse, and you will not go to that inner child because you've been told by someone that if you're going to be an adult, you act as an adult, and you don't laugh like a kid, and you're not a kid, and you squeal like a kid. You don't get on your hands and your knees like a kid anymore. And I'm telling you, dear ones, listen. If you will visit your inner child, it'll save your life. Your inner child is who you are. That's the beauty of a child in their innocence. And he never went in there. Woe was an old soul, and he was balanced. But as he ignored these things and just let them be, in came the rats, and in came the snakes, and all the other things. Not too long afterwards, Woe found himself in the backyard, in his lawn chair, sipping his drink with a straw with sunglasses on. Because the sun was blaring, and he noticed something right away. Color. The flowers were coming, and they had not been there all his life. He realized that all things were okay. The tree, he could still grab it and hang on to. It was still his support. But it was going to have new branches, different kinds of shade. The playhouse in his own mind and the tree house was still there. He could remember it. He could laugh and he could squeal. The barrels, he had them removed. Who wants old barrels in your backyard? That's the parable. How's your backyard, dear one? How many of you felt the earthquake? Now let me give you another secret. The earthquake's different for all of you. It was yesterday, it was 2012, perhaps it's tomorrow. Something that shakes the foundation of your belief, and it doesn't have to be negative. You could leave this place and understand all of this. Before you go to bed tonight, you could have an epiphany of saying, I recognize my backyard, and it's not pretty. I don't want an earthquake. I just want a new tree. And this would be the wise old soul who says, you don't have to take me to zero for me to get it. And then there will be others who will have issues in their life that will take them to a place where you have to face things you didn't want to face. And you'll cry out to God and that, what have you done? What's wrong? What have I done? Why am I here? Why is this happening to me? I'm speaking to somebody in the audience. I'm a good person. I'm a good old soul. I believe in these things. Why is this happening to me? And the answer is because you're stubborn, and you know it. And you're going to go through this, and you're going to come out the other side with light. And the tree will be pruned, but it won't kill it. And you'll know what I'm talking about, dear one. This is how you are. Every human, absolutely elegantly different in every single way. But all of you have a backyard. Ponder these things in the light of the changes on the planet and the changes that may have to occur in your consciousness and even what you believe when I ask, who are you? Back to the message of this morning. When you start to analyze who you might be on this planet and what you might be here for. And the answers are beautiful. There's majesty in the answers. There's magnificence in all of the realizations when you start answering one by one. This is the message of Kryon and has been for 30 years. We just tell it different every time. And so it is.
Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. Again, we are here in a way that may seem strange to many. I want you to get used to hearing this voice. I want you to understand the reality that is here. You would ask yourself, human being, is this real? You might say, Kryon, I'm having a hard time believing that you're really channeling and that the voice comes from the other side of the veil. It's so difficult. If that's what you're saying today, human being, I will say, blessed are you. For these are honest words coming from one who is struggling to work out of the three-dimensional box. And what happens is that slowly, if you ask the right questions of your own self, of your own belief, of your own psyche, you start getting shown things you didn't expect. For if indeed it is a quantum experience on the other side of the veil, if indeed I am linearizing this conversation and presenting it to my partner, if this is true, this is a quantum experience. And that means that language is only a small part of it. That the audio that you would hear or the words that are seen on the page, such a small part of it. We have spoken of something called the third language. This third language, identified some time ago, is not a language in linearity, which is the third one. It is a language of the catalyst of the three. We use the three in numerology to represent a catalytic action number. That is to say that all of you have the ability to receive what is being given at a level which is quantum and not language, and not words on a page. Even the reader of this particular message can ask for a quantum experience and be in the session with those who are in the session. Art and music. We've told you that they are quantum. We have told you how you could go into the Louvre and watch a painting. That you can immerse yourself so completely that you can see and feel the artist creating it. That you become one with the creator of the painting. So much is there that is not for the human eye. And this is the one who appreciates the art. Music touches your very soul. All of the notes playing together in unison, in harmony. It is one of the only arts where all of that can be presented together and there's no limit to the number of musicians on a stage. But you can't do that with speech, can you? No limit to the number of colors on a palette. You can't do that with speech, can you? There's a little bit of quantum in everything, if you look. So look for it here before we start a message that is not going to be a quantum one filled with love necessarily, although it is. But we're choosing to do something unusual. We're going to give you some science. We've chosen perhaps an odd place for that, but we haven't. For we think in a quantum way. We wanted to come to this place. We want to honor those who built this building. We want to honor the ancestors who are listening. We've come to a very quiet place in the stillness of a Southwest in order to give a message of clarity, of purity, so that others will also receive it in that fashion. So it is not about the message at all, it is about the delivery. It is about the energy of where you sit. It is about the preparation that we give my partner sitting in this place. And so we will. When we give a scientific message, when we give suggestions, I ask my partner to go very slow. Some of this has been revealed to him and some of it has not. I ask him to proceed slowly, for it will be seen and read clearly, and much will be seen around it. For what follows in this message is not just esoterics. There will be a practicality, and there will be physicists looking at it. And that makes my partner nervous. It is not going to be complex. For even the one sitting in the chair who doesn't understand science will still receive what they need to receive through the third language, and will understand why these things are being given. And all through this, the entourage which is poured into this place, which represents the ancestors of all of you, resounds even with the builders of this building, of the consciousness that allowed it to be planned so many years ago. For the display of ceremonies that it has on a regular basis, and what that means to the earth and the land, to continue to hear the ancients giving the sounds that they have given for so long. All of this wrapped into this building, into this place where my partner gives a message of science. Not necessarily a long one, but one which you have to hear. It's about the environment. And let us start with assurance. Let us review one more time that what you are seeing in weather changes on this planet you have not created by yourselves with human effort. What you have called global warming is not global warming at all. And I say it again, it is part of a cycle that always was. The North Pole has melted several times and come back several times. It is a waxing and waning. The water evaporation cycle, it has been here before. It is here sooner than expected, and that is alarming. If you were to ask Gaia, the actual energy of Gaia right now to come into this place, Gaia would give this message: humans have not caused this. Could it be any clearer? And I give you this information so there would be no alarm sounded of things that you would have to change drastically and dramatically. Now, At the same time I would say that, I would say this: there is a mandate to change your energy. What you put into the air is significant, for it is a hazard to your health. What you put into the air hurts humanity, not necessarily Gaia. Gaia is more resilient than you think. Gaia adjusts in ways you don't expect. Gaia takes care of Gaia. Clean up the air, and you will live longer. And that is one of the subjects of today. It's going to get colder. That's one of the subjects of today. You're going to need more energy. That is the subject of today. And we have given you the steps of creating energy easily. And we've given you advice in the past. And one of them we wish to revisit. For it's time for you to think out of the box of three-dimensional when it comes to some of the things that we have discussed with you. You think in a straight line. You don't think past necessarily certain things that you assume. At the same time I give you this information, I will also tell you that this particular information is already known on the planet. It is the way of it. We do not give you something that has not already occurred to a human being. Free choice is what we have told you is the operative word, even in science. This must have occurred, and a human being must have had a situation where they're actually aware before we will give you a message like this. And the reason we do it is because one human being aware sometimes could do nothing about it. But the thought is given. When these thoughts are given to humanity, they normally land on the planet in more than one place. That is to say, epiphanies of discovery happen all at once, usually 3 to 4 times, in order to assure that they will not be lost. And so I am going to add this voice. There is tremendous energy available from the earth for free. It is not free energy, for you have to build an extractor to get it. But it's everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. It is called geothermal energy. And it goes like this. Below your feet, not very far, not really. It's hot. Hot enough for you to drill down and create steam. If you can create steam through natural process of thermal energy of the planet, you can drive turbines and create electricity. That will create heat. There are other ways to create heat as well, using even the geothermal heat itself. You're fond of steam engines, and you've been using them very, very long time, and you continue to. Today's nuclear reactors are simply very, very expensive steam engines. For you heat water, you create steam, and you drive turbines. So we are giving you something to think about. For nuclear power, as good as it is not clean. There is a side effect. And you know what it is. For there are waste products which are dangerous, and you know this. As clean as it is, there is still something you have to dispose of. Geothermal, there is no thing you have to dispose of. But it is dangerous. And now we open the discussion. If you can drill approximately 5 kilometers down, you will find enough heat. Now 5 kilometers to you is not that far in a straight line along the surface of the earth. Many of you walk that distance to school and work. It's not that far. But if you're going to drill down technically, it becomes difficult and dangerous. Not just dangerous for the driller, but dangerous for the planet. On the way down, through the crust of the earth to the 5-kilometer mark. You go through pockets that you might know are there, releasing gas perhaps, releasing fire perhaps, releasing water perhaps. If nothing else, sometimes you interrupt what we will call the integrity of the lubricant of the shale itself. And what I'm saying here is you might even advance the potential of an earthquake, all by drilling down only 5 kilometers. And so I'm going to give you the answer. And now I'm saying, think out of the box. All along you're thinking that you're going to drill down and put a pipe with water in it. What if I told you you only had to drill down a fraction of that distance, and you could find enough heat to boil? And you'd say, impossible. Oh, it exists over the hot spots of the earth, but you might know it doesn't exist in most of the places we're asking you to drill. Well, it will work if you don't use water. It's time to marry the highest technology that you have on the planet with things you didn't expect to marry them with. And this is thinking out of the box. This is becoming a little more quantum, seeing the entire picture instead of just seeing what you think it should be. There are solutions, and you know what they are, and they're elegant, that will boil at a fraction of the temperature that water will. And this is the answer. Learning to use those substances and those fluids and that chemistry into a geothermal machine that doesn't have to drill down 5 kilometers. How about 2? And we tell you this because you're going to need to do this. And if you do it, and if the advice is followed, you'll find that the timing and the synchronicity of discovery is at hand. That is to say, you will understand these things will fall together. You will get the steam engine, and it won't take 5 years to build, and it won't be dangerous, and you don't have to cover it with a shell. Much easier. It won't belch smoke. It won't pollute. And you don't have to worry about being next to it. And it'll drive electricity. And you're going to need to heat homes and businesses, because eventually it's going to get cold. That's number 1. We're going to give you one other invention. Now, this also has been presented on the planet. This has been thought of and not acted upon. This actually is not all that new. But I will tell you that there is a situation at hand where it was inappropriately purchased and pocketed. So I'm going to give it to you so that the public can see it, and anyone with synchronicity who listens to the message and reads the words will understand it. Even you sitting in the chairs will understand it. And the scientists and the physicists will then have to implement it. The resource that this planet is going to need the most, as the population grows, as the weather changes, is what you probably already have guessed. Fresh water. Already it's becoming scarce. You will notice the snow is falling in the wrong place. The reservoirs are built for the old energy with the old weather. The aqueducts are built for the old energy and the old weather, and all the snow is falling in the places that are not obtainable for fresh water, and that will be the way of it. As the populations grow, scarce it becomes. And there is one answer. It is a profound way, when the earth is mostly water, to use the sea and the ocean. The ocean, of course, is not fresh water. And so you have to ask how to extract the salt. desalinization exists today in a very inefficient way. Large amounts of water have to go into vats of containment and sit there, or large amounts of energy are used to heat the water. In various ways, various attributes, various systems, some of them steam, some of them not, all requiring heat to take out the salt. It takes a long time. It's expensive. It's not efficient. It is not tenable to desalinate for an entire city. Only in places that simply have no fresh water at all is it used. So inefficient is it. Now I'm asking you to think out of the box, and I'm going to give you the answer. My partner, I want you to go slow here. Most of the cities on earth, of all of the countries on earth, the largest ones are on the coasts near the water. This is because over time, those coastal areas were the places where trade could happen with ships and ports. And so you end up with the largest cities being on the ocean. It's a good place to start, is it not? To give water for them from the source which they can simply look at and use. The answer is not that difficult, but it requires something that has not been thought of, really. The highest technology you have today has to do with the smallest of the small. You call it nanotechnology. That which is extremely small, even taking form as what you would call robots, that could be inserted even into the bloodstream, perhaps even to seek out and kill disease. That's how small the nanoparticles are. You're making them intelligent through chemistry, through logic, through electronics, and cleverly you find that they can do many things. Now I'm going to give you a task. You're going to build a desalinization plant where the water never stops flowing, where it can be treated and salt can be removed and a byproduct created that you had no idea about. It never has to rest. It never has to be cooked. There is no heat involved at all. It goes in one end and comes out the other in a steady flow. In one end it's salty, in the other end it's fresh, ready then for purification. And here is the answer. Through nanotechnology, in the first stages of the system with the water flowing, you release enough nanotechnology robots that are assigned to find the salt and attach themselves to it. Except there is a caveat, and that every single robot is magnetic. I am the magnetic master, after all. All of the salt then becomes magnetic. It's not that hard. You have the chemistry for it. You have the nanotechnology. Think out of the box. Think out of the box. Chemist, physicist, you can do it. On to the next stage, flowing into the next part, tremendous, huge electromagnets, pulling the salt out of the water completely and totally because the salt is magnetic. Out it goes. Oversimplified, perhaps, but this is the way of it. No heat involved. Now, the byproduct? You won't believe it. Oh, and it will be controversial when you discover it. Magnetic fields applied to water often creates water that is quite healing. Do you see where this is going? What a device that might be. It will be quantum, because it uses magnetics. And this is what we wanted to give you today. This is what we wanted to have recorded today. In this way, that you might hear it. There is so much more. And just in closing, I will tell you what we see in the future, and we're not going to give you a time frame, for there is none. This information I'm about to give you can be 2 generations away, maybe 3. But it all has to do with quantum invention. Physicists, listen, I'm going to give you something you already know is possible. It is another field of science. It flies in the face of everything 3-dimensional you've ever learned. Humans are funny. Even in the highest math and geometry you have, everything is defined in a straight line. Everything defined in a straight line. A circle is an infinite number of straight lines. That's funny. It's almost as though a circle didn't exist in nature, and the human has to straight line it for it to exist. Interesting, isn't it? I'm just giving you the bias. Bubbles have always been around. They're beautiful, you know. They're natural, you know. The circle is a natural occurring event in space as well. What you don't know, and you may suspect, gravity and magnetism all bend. They don't go straight. They never have. What about light? It doesn't either, when affected by the other two. That ought to tell you something. Nothing is really a straight line at all. The only straight lines around are in the brains of the humans. You're not using the right kind of math either, and we've told you that. There is an elegance of math that is quantum. And if I begin to tell you about it, even in the simplest terms, it's going to seem overly complex. Quantum math uses something that is going to be discovered, and we're going to give it a name, and that's going to be influential numbers. Numbers that exist not with empirical values, but with values that are influenced by the numbers around them. 4 is not a 4. 4 is modified because of the numbers that sit next to it. In a formula, in linearity, in counting, each time a formula is manufactured in a quantum state, looking for a solution, all of the numbers are modified by the numbers next to them. They're influential numbers. The 4 is affected by the 5. Reduced maybe by the 3. And in quantum math, if you use influential numbers, dear ones, it is a beautiful thing when you find out the attributes of them and they are consistent. You will then have the formula for a circle being a whole number, not an irrational number at all. It won't be pi. It'll be pi solved. We ask the physicists to work it backwards if you have to get a whole number of pi. That'll give you a hint at what has to be done. Imagine mathematics with influential numbers, where each number is not empirical, but influenced by the one around it. I'm giving you high math now. And here's how it's going to serve you. Because when you start to understand it, you're finally going to understand what I'm going to call the holy grail of physics. That's a human term. In your straight line thinking, in your bias, you have all of your 3D formulas, don't you? And when you look at the basis of physics, you talk about those things which have mass. And in those things which have mass, you've even figured out atomic structure and density. All those things. And you think they're static, don't you? You think there is a formula that is for everything. If it has so much mass, it weighs so much in a certain atmosphere, a certain gravity. You've got it all figured out. And I will tell you that all of those formulas are 3D. And as soon as you become quantum with them, they all stretch. All this to tell you this: it is possible for you to alter the mass of any object in existence. It doesn't matter how large or small or dense it is. You can alter the mass of it, and you have thought all this time that the formula is static, and it is not. In Yugoslavia, there's a workshop. Historic it is, for the man who thought out of the box, Tesla. And in that workshop there are marks on the ceiling for the objects that took off on his workbench and went straight up. Shattered they did, hitting the ceiling they did. Nikolai was frustrated, for he had discovered massless objects and didn't know how. He thought out of the box, the only one in existence to ever give you a thought of how alternating current might work. Oh, it's more than 3D, study it. The same applies with numbers. The same applies with mass. And I will tell you that it is accomplished through magnetics. Always has been. And that was the experiment. In Tesla's time, without a computer, without any of the finite instruments you have today to measure what you have, he did it. But he couldn't control it. Frustrated he was. By the way, he's back. I'm not going to tell you where. Maybe he will listen to this and know what to do next. Clever it is how magnetic fields must be arranged around other magnetic fields. Even solutions that are magnetized to create fields within fields, sometimes at right angles, sometimes not, to give you a condition that will create a change in mass. None of these things are out of the purview of human development. How long it'll take? We don't know. That's up to you. But do you understand what it will change? That means that the things of science fiction are finally yours. What you call anti-gravity is simply an object without mass. It'll float, no matter how big. It's doable. It's in all of your science fiction movies. Maybe it's time to implement it. Kryon, why do you give us these things? And with this we close. We want you to stay here. Give it in love. We want you to stay here. And you're not going to have much luck with that unless you start thinking quantum. Unless you start accelerating the inventions and put some of the politics out of the way. For the countries which must do this are the ones that have the highest technical abilities. And they also have the highest influential structures that are in the way of it all. It is time for the population to understand this and turn the physicists loose and not strap them with those things that are difficult with burdens. And maybe you don't know what I speak of, but they do. Because we want you to stay. In the process, there will be life extension. In the process, there will be epiphanies. In the process, you might even find that this message was accurate and true. And then you've got a puzzle, don't you? Physicists, if you're listening to this, you've got a puzzle. Because who is it who is speaking from the other side of the veil, giving you information that is true and real and scientific? At some level, you're going to have to say, it's the piece of you. At some level, you're going to have to admit that the spiritual and the sciences have lied, and that the creative energy that created the earth and the magnetics and the gravity and all of the things you study is a piece of you. And maybe then you'll open up. And the things that you wish to have invented, all you have to do is open the box, because you already were there and you helped in their creation. How about that one? It all has to do with the puzzle. Is this real or not? Is Kryon real or not? Is love real or not? Well, some of you know, because you've sat in the presence of the Creator today, who loves you. This family on my side of the veil loves you. It's a wonderful Valentine message, isn't it? And so we say to you, dear ones, all of you, that all of the things that we talk about, whether they're scientific, whether they have to do with your Akash or your soul, the higher self, all of those things, there's only one purpose. To make the life you are living on this planet easier. For you to discover the compassion that is the glue that puts you together. That changes the earth itself. For the shift is upon you. And that which you call the 2012 energy is here. Let this be what it is supposed to be. A high time of consciousness, of scientific evolution with integrity, with an economy that is a re-emerging one with integrity, with government that slowly changes with integrity. Things that you would never put together, that in the past were oxymorons.
Let's spend some time getting into that timeless state of being in the now. And the easiest way to do that is to just quieten our mind for a moment. And I invite you to close your eyes and let any thoughts you have floating around in that beautiful brain of yours just dissolve away. We're just going to melt all of those thoughts, those things that we're thinking about, what we have to do in another hour, what we did last night, all of those thoughts, let's just bundle them up and let them slowly dissolve away and fade into the background. We can pick them up in a minute or two, but for now, we just want to have everything dissolve away, emptying out all our cares, all our worries, tuning in to this now moment. There's nothing to do, there's nothing to even think about. There's simply just this sensation of being in the now, being fully present within this moment. And so when you feel that you have come a little closer to being in that now moment, just have that attitude of relaxation and that softening of all the parts of your body so that we can now receive a message from Kryon.
Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. The channelings this month in these programs is about timing. So many questions, personally for you, the Earth, especially of what is going on right now on the planet, the surprise of war. These things, dear ones, come about in cycles. But the one I want to talk about right now is that which is you. What is the cycle that we have given you over and over for 32 years to look forward to? We called it the precession of the equinoxes. The ancients actually identified it as a time of change. The Mayans called it a new creation cycle. Other indigenous had many other names, but they all said the same. Things would change. Opportunities for change would be there. They watched the stars. They saw the energy that it might create. They actually channeled the messages, and they were accurate. And it's so true. You are in the shift at the moment. And we have taught that for all of these years. More years than not, we told you it was coming. And now it's here. What is the timing of this in reference to you and your soul? Last week, we discussed something in the Circle of 12. And we had you standing ready to come here. And we called it the wind of birth. We also then described you in that area as heroes in the making. But the question remains, did you actually plan on being here at this moment? Is there some kind of Akashic timing that would help you to be here? The answer is this. It's more profound than you think. Now let's go back. We have given you a lot of information about you as an old soul. And if you have been reflective in this and have studied any of those messages for yourself, you might recall that old souls are those who have been in this school of earth many, many times. Your Akashic record would read that you have had lots and lots of lifetimes, especially on a planet where through centuries, the lifespan was very short. So you might imagine, if you've been here since the beginning, how many thousands of lives you've lived. But you don't have to have been here from the beginning to be an old soul. You just have to have an experience on the planet, which is lengthy. Perhaps even several hundred years to have been here over and over. And what happens each time is that this Akashic record of yours collects wisdom. It collects the been there kind of energy where you wake in the next lifetime, often in the same culture, and you have a more comfortable lifetime because of it, because you know a little more of what to expect. Many times you can see things coming. You can make adjustments because of it. Or you'll have that deja vu experience, been here, done that. I'm not going to do that before, and make adjustments. So what I am saying to you is that the timing often of things that happen to you on this planet, your planning, is wiser than those who are not old souls. Where are you going with this, Kryon? I'm telling you that the more lifetimes you've had on this planet, the more you are aware of the planet, of what is here, of how to work with it, of the potentials. You have what we call slogged through old energy 4 centuries. There's very little light on this planet, dear ones. There are light pockets, and we've talked about that. But suddenly, it's different. This is the shift. It's the one that the ancients talked about. It's the one that we talk about, where the actual quantum field that is around you is being rewritten, rejuvenated, renewed, where the planet is moving into new areas, where the magnetic grid has shifted to allow for higher consciousness energy to be here. And old souls are the key. The more old souls who are on the planet at this time, the better chance you have of pulling yourselves up by the bootstraps and sending light to the earth. Now, take that premise for a moment. We need you, old soul. Let's say that you have started a lifetime, and maybe it was only 30 or 40 years ago. And that lifetime came to a quick end, and you only made it to perhaps 25, 26 years old, and then you passed. There would be those around you. They would say, how could that be? They were on a trip that was enlightened. We could tell that they were very wise. How could their lives be shortened so much when they had so much to do? Now get ready. What if that was in the plan? Your plan. So that you could have one more short lifetime and come back and grow up so you'd be an adult for the shift. And the reason is because we need you at a certain age. And that certain age will mean so that you could teach others better. So you'd be seen by society in a certain age group and do a better job with what you are here for. I just gave you something to really think about. Reasoning behind early death, where we need the old soul, or you see it as a need for you to terminate the current lifetime, come back fresh, young, filled with the energy that you need to save this planet and send it light that you would not have had you not passed. Did you get that? Timing. Here's the statement today about timing. You are here on purpose now. You planned it at the age you are, doing what you're doing. This has all been in what we would call the plan that you set here. And the plan isn't for your life. The plan was for your lives. On the other side of the veil, you have the mind of God. You can see the wisdom. You can even understand and weigh the grief of others when you passed early against what you might do when you return. The lights that you might carry, that you didn't carry or had a hard time carrying when you were here in the last lifetime that terminated early, you would pick up completely with the wisdom and make a far grander impact right now on this planet during this shift than you could otherwise. Let me tell you something to think about and ponder. Many of you have done that. Many of you. So that you would arrive at the right time, at the right place, in the right culture, to be here right now, to send compassion and light to this planet so that it will do things it never would have done in the old energy, and you're seeing some of them. The reactions, perhaps, to the dark energy that shows its head right now, shows itself right now. What's the world's reaction to what's going on right this moment? Have you ever seen anything like that before? And the answer is no. Do you think that the darker energies are surprised? And the answer is yes. But they will struggle and fight and push against the light for a very long time. Your light will win. And we've told you this. You've already seen a piece of this happen. We've also told you 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But here it is, so you can see what happens when the darkness starts to push against something it never expected. A time when the earth would not be dark. A time when light would start to occur and wisdom, compassion, and kindness would start to be part of a love agenda, I'll call it, that this planet is bound for, is awakening to. Timing? You are not here by accident. And if you think you are, I want you to give it a second thought. You're here by design, and you're not here to suffer. You're here to be healthy, and that is why I ask for this program to exist and continue existing, so that you will be able to hear so many human beings that are invested in you and your health, to helping you, to healing you. So many different methods, so many different ways, because there are so many of you who have different methods and different ways and different minds. You're not here by accident. You planned this. So, old soul, if you are in my hearing range right now, I'll tell you this. Go do what you do. But understand that you have an entourage behind you who wants to lift you up and take you to a place where your light will shine and show. Don't let things get to you to beat you up emotionally or spiritually because you see some darkness or don't understand something. You're here to thwart it, to change it, to convert it to light. It's not an easy job. That's why they call it the light worker. That's why you're here. But if I ask you to get going on it, in all love, understand you are dearly loved, each one of you, here on purpose for the salvation of the consciousness of this planet. And so it is.
Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. The element that is studied today is water. And we'll just tell you that that is water, is life. And if there's any kind of a metaphor that would say, what does the element of water mean metaphorically to the human being? It is life itself. Life. You've had that which is the soul, you've had that which is consciousness, but life, how do you weigh the importance of that element? But beyond that, dear ones, you've already discovered that water in crystallized form will show the effect of love and compassion, consciousness. You already know that. There are those in this room who know about that which is the energies that are esoteric of the human being. Energies that were known from the ancients and processes that are used today, taking advantage of them, that Western medicine is just now discovering. So you also know the power of consciousness and how it changes the energies, how energies can be then altered by the way a human being thinks about themselves. There are those who use energy work who have discovered a long time ago that there are human beings who can sit and endure it and have no change, and then there are human beings who can sit and accept it and embrace it that will be healed. So what does that tell you about the meridians? Do they just sit there and do their thing, or are they like antennas that pick up the intent and the consciousness of the human being, amplify it, and go into the places that are designed for them to go into, and affect that which is at the cellular level, life itself, the water? Every process you can think of in this room that you have done or you may be an expert in,
seems to also know who you are when you do it. It's almost like it tunes in to the human being who is part of it all. If you go away with nothing from this series, I want you to remember this one thing. You are powerful. More than just powerful. You are selectively powerful. That is to say, you can design who you are. You can design the diseases you catch and heal. And how you think and what you perceive will lay upon you like a book. Like you can open it and read who you are. I'm afraid of this. I'll catch this. Or I'm going to survive no matter what because I will not catch this. I will not do this. This will not attach itself to me. I am a healthy person. My cells all agree. They cooperate. I know who I am. They know who I am. Which book is yours? No time in history is this more prevalent and more exciting than now. More is happening than you know. The shift that you have gone through at 2012 starts to move so many things, and it is incremental. So slow is it you may not even understand that it's moving. You'll have new processes and new ways to measure them. You'll start to see that which is the body's energy itself start to cooperate with the energies of the consciousness of the human being who is using them. You'll start to see something we've told you before, and that is a move away from that which you've had, which you call allopathy. That there will be no more cures as you think of them, but more like healings and reversals as you design them. Instead of taking a pill that then is going to change some chemistry and at the same time perhaps have side effects, there's going to be a purity of consciousness imbued into whatever device you think, if any at all, put inside the human being, esoterically perhaps with consciousness or otherwise, and the body will recognize it. What do you call homeopathy? Is it a pill? No. It's a signal. The difference should be obvious. Homeopathy is not a drug. It's a signal. It's a signal that is designed to talk to that which is your innate. Your body sees the design, the message is complete, and the healing begins. What does the homeopathy tincture carry that is so remarkable? And why would a signal demand the body do something? And the answer is that with the signal that tells the body what to do, there is the instruction from the boss. That's you, because you are the one who put it under your tongue. And it was your intent imbued upon that which is the tincture. You're the boss talking to yourselves in a way perhaps that the ancients always knew about. When you do acupuncture, what are you really doing? Is the energy in the meridians, in the needles, in the esoterics of it? Or is it a signal? Using that which is the energies. And the signal is instructions. I know you're there, this is the meridian, this is what it does, and it comes from the intent of the one that is able to sit through it and say, it is my body, this is what I want. All of these messages being given to the human body, right to the life source, right to the water. What do you know about water?
You can restructure it with consciousness. What do you know about the human bonding of the water to life itself? You can change it with consciousness. What have you already discovered through the ancient processes that I've just mentioned? Healing, instructions to the body. I want you to start seeing something, that there are more of these than you know. The affirmations that you're now speaking out loud is part of the issue of bringing it out and letting the ears hear it, let it go into the consciousness and affect who you are. Meditation itself is so strong now because it's the human being with the intent giving instructions, not just energies, not just prayers. Do you see the difference between praying for something and instructing? Is it possible you can instruct the planet? Is it possible you can instruct your cells? With all of this, do you think perhaps you could increase your lifespan? Stop aging to the degree that you are. A body ages because it doesn't have instructions. Are you listening to me? The body ages because it does not have instructions. You'll say, this is silly. The body ages naturally because of the way it rejuvenates or does not, because of the telomeres shortening, because of this and that. And I'll tell you, dear ones, it will do what it does if you just sit there and watch it. And that's the default of the way a body works without instructions. But when you start instructing it, then you give it the blueprint of how it reproduces and how it regenerates and how it chases away the inappropriate things. I'm telling you, you're in control. No more than any time in history, you are in control now. It's a greater way than you think. There's more going to be given. But I'll tell you this. I want you to look to the ancients and your ancestors. They had things that you've thrown away. Wisdom that you do not necessarily want to look up and read. Ways of getting along. Old adages and sayings that are so profound that you've cast away on the floor. Ceremonies that worked because the ones who did the ceremony were of like mind and understood what they were doing. Kryon, are you saying we should do ceremony? Yes, you should do it in your own way, in a modern way perhaps, maybe even at the office. Do you think something like that is possible? And the answer is yes. When human beings discover something that works, they'll do it and ask questions later. This is what's happening. This is what's going on. Compassion in the workplace. This is what's going on in so many places around this planet that is unreported, that you don't know about. It will be years before the news will ever pick that story up. Not enough drama, you'd say. And yet it is the most dramatic thing that's happening on this planet. And it will eventually create compassion and peace where there wasn't peace, negotiation between countries that looks far different than it ever did before. That's coming. And for now, we say to you, dear ones, that you are needed to remain peaceful for what you see, to be better knowing and have better knowingness and consciousness and things that would frighten other people, and you know better. And you would say, this is not what it seems. Be peaceful. For your balance will then affect the others around you. And then in the end, they will come to you and say, you were right. Perhaps I should listen more. Perhaps I should look up that which is my ancestry and listen to them more. Perhaps I had to research what they believed and listen to that more.
That's enough for now. And so it is. Of magnetic service. You study air, the fourth element. Here's another element which seems to be invisible. You can see it clearly. The wind carries it. It is the wind. But in general, it is something that is precious to you. You need it for life. Even more than water. You need it constantly, every moment. And there's an alliance in air with Gaia. If you would look at the metaphor in the human body, what would air be to you in this esoteric metaphor? Let's call it your silent life friend. Something that is invisible, something you take for granted, something you need every moment of every day. And when it's gone, you're aware of it. And you cannot survive. My partner today speaks of things that are hidden. They are hidden in history. And the more you learn about them, the more you know about the magnificence of not only yourselves, but of your ancestry. We told you that on this planet today, that the wisdom keepers, which I will say are the ancients with a capital A, they have that which is missing in the Western world. They carry the wisdom from the past. And the indigenous know it. And that is why the indigenous honor the ancestors, listen to the ancestors, and have stories passed down from them that they continue to teach to their children. It's a wise culture that will take the ancients and make it a part of the teaching of the little ones. And that is not what you've done. What if you could extend this? Who were the ancients before the ancients? And that is the study of the stars. The ones in the galaxy before you. Is it possible that their wisdom is also in you? And then you'd have to ask the question, well, where did you really come from? Is it possible that you, as a human soul, are an extension of what has been before Earth had life? And if that's the case, do you have wisdom beyond the planet that you could pull in and help what's going on now? That invisible friend called air is the ancient wisdom you carry. What if you could pull upon this right now? I would like to tell you something, dear ones. Many in this room have. The ones listening to this in the future will begin this. The very wisdom that I am talking about, this invisible friend you have, is yourself in your own Akash. That, combined with what you would call the creative source, is the secret for peace on earth. You are starting to discover energy beyond that which you would say is the energy you would need to live. This is energy within the human body. These are specific energies that have always been here for your humanness and the biology that you had before you ever came here. If I told you that the energies of the creative source and your body were the same for other life forms all over this galaxy, would you question that? Would you say, well, the other life forms probably were not humanoid? Yes, they were. Other life forms were probably not like us? Yes, they were.
And we'll say it again. When you meet them someday, they may look a lot like you. What did you learn that was not from Earth, that you pull in right now in your Akash, and you intuitively are awakening to something that's from the stars? Now, what would that look like? I'll tell you. The astrologers are awakening to quantum astrology. The homeopathists are awakening to esoteric, multidimensional homeopathy, energies beyond what they thought. Some of the most ancient and understood known facilitations are starting to have multidimensional attributes. That is an awakening from the stars. You didn't have it until now, and your Akash is starting to give it to you. This is your best friend. Air is so interesting. Did you know that right now, this particular group, where you are on the planet, is one of the freshest places you can be, with the purest air you could have? The reason? You study in school photosynthesis. You understand the air and carbon dioxide exchange. You understand that Gaia, the trees, are giving you the oxygen that you need for life. You understand that you give them back something they need. But did anyone ever tell you where most of the oxygen on the planet is produced? And if you would say, well, it has to be the forests, you'd be wrong. They're the smallest things that exist, the lichen, all of the moss, the rainforests. They are producing more oxygen than the trees. Therefore, you are in the right place at the right time to go outside while you can and breathe some of the purest oxygen that is being manufactured by your best friend, Gaia. You have another best friend in this metaphor, and it is your Akash. It is giving you the life force that will create something very special on this planet. New information for new health using the energy meridians of the body and so much more. So much more. Energy of the human body will be the secret for longevity and healing someday, more than anything that you have today. Dear ones, there is so much more than you recognize within yourselves that you've never been taught. I want you to leave this place thinking about this. Surrounding you right now, multicolored universe of energies that have your name on it, that walk with you in that which you call your Merkaba, carried partially by you, your biology, your DNA, and even your soul, all mixed together to be something divine, beyond that which reality which you understand, and is the absolute secret of health and life. This is why, as you discover these things in the future, you won't overpopulate yourselves. You'll have wisdom to know what works and what does not. A whole different way of producing food, electricity, and water. A new paradigm of living for the planet will wipe out all of the fears that you currently have in 3D. You don't know what you don't know. If you can hold this vision and think positively, this positive feeling will carry over even into your next life. And when you're born, your Akash will ring with it. That there's hope, you're here for a reason, and you don't have to suffer. The new generation on this planet is the key to everything that's going to take place. And as time goes on, you will be the new generation. Think of it.
And so it is. Of magnetic service. There are so many lessons that human beings could learn that are so beautiful and benevolent and awakening. And they are unique to each of you. Those here in the room, those listening later. They must be learned in a way that is appropriate for each and every life. There is no one grand lesson that everyone has to gather around and learn together. Instead, what happens is groups participate in energies that they start to recognize. And it's not the facts of what you learn, and it's not the list that you might write down. What you sense that puts you together into a cohesive unit is the attributes of love. And you feel safe and you recognize it. And that is the communication between light workers. Not that which you would call a belief system. I would like to say, stop calling it a system. Is love a system? And the answer is no. Is compassion a system? And the answer is no. Then your relationship to the Creator is not a system. It just is. But others will recognize the same energy that you do. Not in a system, but in that compassionate energy that surrounds all of you. It makes you a better person because you are compassionate and loving to yourself, but then to others. It changes all of the attributes of your expectations, but it's got to start at home. It has to start that place that you call you. And you've heard it over and over, forgiveness of self. It's not really forgiveness. It's an awareness of who you are and what you may not have to forgive. It's an awareness, again, of being born magnificent. And no matter who you thought you were, that is who you were as a child. That's what the child thought until they grew up and understood everything about compassion and love. The God that created you is you. I'll say it again. Made in His image is a phrase that so many have used in the past to describe the divinity in a human being. And the image is not the image of a prophet or the image of the face of God. It's the image of compassion. It is love. Made in His image means you are a piece of the Creator. The image of the Creator is inside you. That's magnificent. That's the engine that you start to use to create whatever it is you need right now. Solution to the problem you came with today? The engine is there. Solution to the health issues you have? The engine is there. We told you the last time we met. How are you going to instruct the engine to then drive forward and eliminate these things that you don't necessarily need to have, that are inappropriate to your life at this time, dear light worker? Do you feel that your life is limited? Do you feel that perhaps it's going to be over soon? I will tell you that all of that thinking was placed upon you in an older energy, in a three-dimensional place, and somehow, some way, you have believed it to this minute, not understanding that made in His image means that you have control over the length of time you stay. And that nothing that is going on right now in your life
is forever. That it can be moved aside today, tomorrow. You don't know what you don't know. And what you don't know is how powerful you are. The power is for you to change you. You're on the water, dear ones. This is the time. I'm going to give you some things you didn't really think about. There were a few astronauts a couple of decades ago that completely went out of the Earth's field of gravitation, and there were only a few. And these are the ones that flew to the moon. It doesn't matter whether they landed there or not. They were out of touch with anything that would ground them to the planet for a couple of weeks. And they never, ever got grounded. They never went to a port. And the fact that they were completely and totally outside of the Earth's magnetic field was significant. They were ungrounded, totally and completely. Now I want you to study a little bit of what happened to those men. One of them became an artist, another a poet, another spiritually minded to the max. That's all he wanted to talk about. Others didn't talk about what happened to them because they were very private. But they were so private they didn't even want to talk about the trip, because each single one of them had an epiphany that they never expected. These are scientists and pilots and astronauts that were chosen from the finest ones, the logical ones, and they all were affected. For a few days, you get to be ungrounded. And I'll tell you that the energy in this place is ripe for change, discovery, decisions, solutions. I'll say it again. Change, discovery, and solutions. Take advantage of it or not. That is free choice. I speak to the small group here. And those listening in the future, know this, that when you take these journeys where you're over and on the water for lengths of time, that these create wonderful creative times. And we've said it before. Those who want to write books, take a cruise. Those who want to write poetry, take a cruise. Those who want to have solutions in their life that they cannot seem to grasp, take a cruise. It's almost an invitation for you to think differently. Accomplish things you might not have otherwise. And then when you return to the grounding, it all starts to make sense. And you look backwards to only perhaps a week or two before and say, I never thought of that. I feel different now. And it wasn't because it was a vacation, dear ones, any more than the astronauts took a vacation. It was something else. You with you, some of the greatest tools you could have. And so it is.
Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. The process of channeling is different for some. There's no right and wrong way. It's an individual way, unique to the human being. There are those who channel in this room. I know who's here. You do it in your own way. You do it through intuitive processes. You get what you get and you speak what you speak, and it's accurate. That's channeling.
What you see is a direct connection here with my partner and myself, and it's been 26 years in the making. He is comfortable with it. He steps away into a place that we have discussed before where he watches and is comfortable. And what is happening now is we're using everything that the human being has, his culture, his language, his intellect, and his willingness to be clear, in order to talk to you in real time. Spirit does not communicate in a linear fashion. What you are hearing is his interpretation and translation of a multidimensional message that is coming in many times. He has learned to linearize it for your ears. But at the same time, there's something called the third language. It is multidimensional, and it's coming from this chair. It's talking to some of you right now, and you'll feel it way beyond the words that come. It is available for any who hear the words, even those who listen later. The third language is the intuition communication from Spirit as you listen to me. We are family. That's who we are. We're not teachers to you. We're family. And when you're not here, you are like us. It is so hard for you to believe that you are more than you are. The filter that you have that keeps you human and not something else stays in place as long as you are here. To the very last breath that you take before death, you're still wondering, is it real? That's free choice. It must be that way, dear human. And yet here you sit. And some of you are believing and cognizing the reality of this. Some of you are feeling that I'm here. I've said so many times, I am here because there are things for you to know. We look at you and we say, we're so congratulative on what you have been able to accomplish. Not just that, the willingness to listen, to know, to hear. There are some who are here and who tune into this because you're in trouble. For a moment, I want you to suspend that. Did you know you can? There's a part of you that knows better than to buy into that which would cause distress with you. No matter what it is in your life, you can suspend it for a moment and feel the love of God in your life, if only for a moment, to help tip the balance of normalcy so you can breathe easy just for a few moments and know that all is well and that we know you. I want to call this the mid-year report of 2015. It's not a long, enduring channel. It is one we want to give you so that you know where you are. We speak of what is happening in a practical way, in a common sense way, to humanity and to old souls. Now there is a difference. For the new energy carries with it attributes that all will feel on the planet in a slow fashion where they won't be alarmed. And then there are attributes that the old souls feel very powerfully, very quickly. And they know it. There's a change in the way you think. We talk about the mental attributes of consciousness. And we say you are starting to think differently. This is a difficult one because really, truly, it involves consciousness. If you take a look around the planet and see some of the things that are happening, there are different kinds of consciousness. People are starting to think different, to get together and act differently because there is a mental difference. You can't put your finger on it, and sociologists have not even seen it yet for what it is. There's a softening going on. There are those who will start to understand that they don't have to sit in a certain kind of box anymore, and it's okay to be more expansive, perhaps to think out of the box, maybe to include others more. You can see it in religion. You may actually see it in politics. These are human beings, regular human beings, who are being affected by an energy that is coming at you, and we told you it would be here. Now, in order for you to understand what we're talking about, we have to review. Some time ago, we talked to you about being in a new area of space. Your solar system, as it moves around the center of the galaxy, is entering a different kind of space that has a different energy in it. Ask an astrologer and an astronomer, for they both understand the ramifications of this. An astronomer will tell you it may actually affect the heliosphere of the sun. This then affects that which is your magnetic grid, which affects you. This has been the teaching of Kryon since the beginning. I am the magnetic master, and there's a reason for the name. Therefore, there may be different thinking. It's right on schedule, dear ones, and we said this before, and many of you are starting to see it and feel it. Is it possible that Earth and the solar system is moving into a different kind or area of space with an energy you haven't seen before that literally is on target, on track, timed properly, on purpose? In case you had passed that marker of 2012, you needed it. And you're here, and you do, and it is. You're thinking differently. What is the most linear, unstoppable force that is the same that you can think of, that is the hardest thing to change? And you would say, well, from what we have seen, it has to be religion on the planet. The sources of it is old. The belief system has never changed. It is creating problem after problem because there is no willingness to change. And it's changing. You're going to see it, dear ones, in almost all of the boxes you call religion. But one of the biggest has a pope. We told you about it. We celebrated it. Before it happened, we told you you would have a new pope. We told you what he was going to do. At that point in time, you all thought the old one would die. What a paradigm change. It's called a wild card. A wild card is defined as something that happens that nobody expected, that is not in the paradigm that it should be. Imagine having 2 living popes. Even the Vatican is confused. Against all odds, one of them resigned. He didn't resign to die, dear ones. Did you notice? He's still around. And the new one took over. And against all odds, he was from South America. And against all odds, he has started talking differently than any pope has ever talked. Because he knows, in order to save his church, he's going to have them think differently. There has to be consciousness shift within his church to remain a church. It is actually more threatened than you know. There will be more like him who understand these kinds of things. It's the way of what we would call the mental attitude of humanity all over. You're reaching out for things you never reached out for before. The majority on the planet right now want peace on earth. It's the minority who don't care. We'll talk about that more in a moment. Where are you at this point in time? You're in year 2. We told you this before, dear ones. that this new energy was measured from 2014. 2013 didn't count. You were too busy with recalibrating yourself. And we were there for it. 2014 was year 1. This is year 2. How are you doing? Have you talked to a 2-year-old lately? How are you doing? You are beginning and you're doing well. What are the biggest issues that you are getting through? Fear. That's the first one. And you're doing it well. Against all odds, you're seeing what is in front of you, and you're starting to realize and recognize this is why you're alive. Old soul, this is what you waited for. And even though it might be tough going, it's finally here. It's here. Now, how do you use it? How do you recognize it? What does it mean? Can I say something to all of you at this time in your planet's history? Relax. These things are going to start becoming clear as you go. Part of the mental realignment, or what we will call the evolution of the consciousness of all those on earth, is that they're going to start wanting to have their spirituality make sense, instead of just following the rules of their parents. It's going to have to make sense. You're going to see some major spiritual groups be exposed. You're going to start seeing those who make a difference, making a difference in a different way. You're going to see some awakenings within the church, even all churches, when they start seeing that which is the basis of their attendance, which would be those in priesthoods, dwindle, because it's not making sense. And that's when they will start changing things. Others will have a resurgence. And the difference is this: look for compassionate spiritual systems to increase. If it has compassion and the love is obviously there, it's going to increase. Don't make the mistake of linking it perhaps to a master or somebody from the past. I'm not talking about that. If there's compassion and there is love, it will increase. It's a new paradigm. Those who have no compassion and there is no love and it's obvious that it's something else will dwindle. It's simple. Watch for it. You're going to see it. That's a mental shift. Physically, how are you doing? Dear ones, the physical body of the human being is going to have a resurgence in awareness. Now let me speak in terms that are better. Human beings are going to start caring more about what they eat, what goes into their bodies, and a realization that what you have called alternate medicine doesn't have to be alternate. It can simply be another one that works. So start watching this, because it's closer to mainstream than you think, dear ones. The things that are happening and are being discovered right now, we have discussed before. You're starting to move into a new paradigm of healing that's going to involve more kinds of energy than chemistry. And so look to this. You'll see not energy work as you call it in the New Age, but energy cures. That is cures and health remedies that involve that which is physics as much as that which is chemistry. Sometimes it will be together. It's coming. In some ways, it's already here. It's new. So physically, for you, both for the human race and for the light worker, you're going to start responding differently to these cures. Now there is more. for old souls, you're going to have more of an awareness of how to stay on this planet longer. Did you hear that? Now, this may seem unfair to many. Why is it that a group of people would have a better awareness than others? And I say to you again, it is no different from those in school who have been there for 9 years instead of 2. They know better. They know more. They're able to navigate within the system better because they've been there longer. That is why, dear one, you will start awakening to things that others will not. Years and years ago, as many as 15, I gave you a channel that said there would come a time when consciousness would determine how a person heals instead of the strength of their chemistry. And you're here. And that is what we want to tell you that is different. Today, my partner started to talk to you about some of the new things that he is seeing that are being embraced. In this process, so many of them have to do with consciousness, the physics of consciousness, even that which is energy on the planet, as opposed to new chemical inventions. It is the way of it. You're going to see more of it. But the old soul is going to become more aware of it and faster. Be alert for it, dear ones, for it's almost like something that sits in front of you that you will see and others will not. Let synchronicity bring you things. It'll keep you alive longer. The physical body of the human being is starting to evolve through DNA. And in this process, it is the old soul who will have the benefit first. You've been around longer. You've experienced more. Your Akashic record is stronger. And it just yells that this is what you've been waiting for. You're right on schedule. There's much to come in this. The third one is spirituality. And now we do not speak of the spirituality you have in this room or even those who are listening. We're speaking of the earth in general. We told you there'd come a day, dear ones, where this would happen, and it is. Do you realize what's going on? You are actually battling duality. For the first time in history, this planet has a war of dark and light, not of country against country. Do you see it? We told you it was coming. We said that there will be organization of darkness. The ones who are invested in keeping things the same, under the guise of a spiritual system, will create darkness, and it will frighten you, and it is. We've also given that which is information as a review, that the fear that they want to develop, they know, will stop you if you let it. That's all they have. You're doing well, for you're seeing it for what it is. There are some who are afraid, indeed. But the old soul has seen it before. And the old soul knows that it cannot harm them, because light will eventually win. What you see going on right now is very interesting, and let me tell you and paint a picture. Isn't it interesting to you that such a force could be gathered so quickly and move into so many areas, and the governments are not doing anything about it? This is because you're looking at a paradigm that has caught them all by surprise. They're used to fighting languages and countries and ideologies, not that which is dark. They're having a difficult time even agreeing that it's a problem, because they think it'll go away, and it won't. It's going to get worse before it gets better. There will come a tipping point where they'll all understand it finally and join together, and it will be the consciousness of the planet against a few. They won't have a chance. But not right now. So I use what you're seeing on TV right now as proof that these words are accurate and true. Your governments have never seen anything like it. Therefore, they have a tendency to discount it. They have a tendency to say it's going away, it's a fad, it's a flash in the pan. It isn't. It's new. It's the darkest thing you can imagine, and it's able to recruit from anywhere. Because darkness is anywhere you want to look. Dear ones, by free choice, you have those who think this way everywhere in any walk of light, any walk of life. The light really doesn't matter. They could be in a place that is well lighted spiritually, and they still, you don't even know it, will think in the dark. This is a challenge of duality. They will be attracted to the dark. This group will have no trouble pulling out recruits from the strangest places, even the church. Darkness will attract itself because darkness is having trouble with the light around it. Again, light is active, darkness is not. Therefore, light will win if it's turned on. It's not being turned on. It will. Do not concern yourself overly with what you see as far as your future. I say it again. It's right on schedule. And could I say this to you without giving away anything? Those that are your seed parents, that you call the Pleiadians, had the exact same thing happen. Every planet of free choice that moves past that marker where it starts to graduate has the exact same problem. A battle for the old ways, a battle for the dark. Isn't it obvious when you look at it? The dark and the light. Can you see compassion and love, and you can see the absence of it? It's becoming more defined for you, isn't it? That is because you're evolving. There was a time when people could not see that, and now you see it very clearly. Finally, there is this. There is a wild card coming. All that we see, that is the potential of the planet in the overview, leads us to say this. And the wild card is not a bad one, any more than the last one you had, which was the fall of the Soviet Union. The wild card may actually be something that no one expects against a paradigm that nobody thought was there. It has to do with inventions. You're going to start getting some odd ones. They're not scheduled. But then again, none of them were that you received. Now let me back up. And I want you to follow me and connect the dots. Dear ones, the greatest inventions that humans have were all given to you when you needed them. You might say that inventions progress in a logical way. As you invent one technology, it leads to another and to another. You would be correct, mostly, but not with the wild cards. The last one you had that you were ready for was flight. It's not much more than 100 years old. You see that, do you not? And yet humans have been flying kites for thousands of years. They've been watching birds as long as birds existed. They have been looked to the skies and saying, I wish I could fly. And yet, something as simple as you know now about flight was so elusive. You got it all at once on the planet. You claim it as an American. An American inventor gave you flight. 2 bicycle makers figured it out. And the whole history never did. You only beat the French by 2 weeks. They were all working on it together. Dear ones, inventions are given to this planet when the consciousness is ready for them. The same was with radio. This was also given to you when you needed it. It was not a natural extension of another kind of invention. The same was with Tesla's alternating current. No one could ever think of that unless he was a master who had the knowledge before he came in. By the way, if you take a look at his life, he had much more to give you. And none of it stuck. When you see something like this, you have to know that inventions are something that you receive when you need it. There's another one coming. There's actually 3. I cannot tell you when, how, or where. I will tell you that you're right on schedule for another phase, another wild card to look forward to. A good one, dear ones, like the other ones have been. And it's time. When you see it, you'll know it. You'll say, against all odds, this is different. What a deal. Dear ones, we're happy to give you all of this information in this day. That's where you are. Other planets have been right where you are. There's no surprise. From our standpoint, as we look at you, there's no surprise in year 2. Growing up, identifying the new energies, getting rid of the bullies, growing up. Peace on earth is guaranteed if you continue. Peace on earth will be necessary for some inventions. And that's so you will not weaponize them. This is coming. Peace on earth is not the end, it's the beginning. It was for the Pleiadians as well. Peace on earth comes with consciousness that has wisdom. It is part of that which is the new human. Now, in summary, where are you? You're discovering a compassionate earth. The old souls are awakening to a new energy. The dark is fighting you because it's afraid of you. Your news and your media is old energy, and you know it. There are new kinds of media and news coming that you can turn to that are balanced for programs you want to watch instead of those that you are given to watch. All of these things are before you. Personally, dear ones, physically and mentally, you're in year 2. Can I tell you this? Loved beyond measure, we want you to stay. We don't want you to be frustrated. But when you're recalibrating, for some of you listening to this, when you're recalibrating, all of those things don't mean anything. It is so tough for you. Hang in there. And know that there is part of you that knows all about what you're going through. That holds your hand and says, hang on. There is love. There is compassion. There is purpose. You'll get through it. Good news. And so it is.